Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm Sal Internado. The Black Knight Nation podcast is sponsored by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a world-class consulting firm that trains employees in sports psychology secrets that drastically improve work performance. Higher Echelon's founder is Joe Ross, who's a retired Army and who played and later coached at West Point. And we thank Dr. Joe Ross for sponsoring this podcast. And we'd like to welcome, it's an honor to welcome a very special guest to today's podcast, Bob Caslen, 59th superintendent of West Point and now president of the University of South Carolina. Bob, thanks for this time. It's an honor. Really appreciate it.
Hey Sal, how you doing? It's great to be with you.
Good. I was just talking to an Army football player from the mid '80s today, just trying to get some stories. And he's saying that you were an officer representative with the team at that point, and he said that you were very fair and you were very to the point. But he also said that he didn't really know right away that you were an Army football player. He didn't really tell the players at that time that you were an Army football player. And I thought that maybe start this with that. Your time as an Army football player and what you remember about that going back to your playing days and your days as a cadet.
So I played, so I was a plebe in 1971 when I first got there, graduated in 1975. I'll give a shout out to my very close friend and classmate, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, just a great guy as well. But nevertheless, those were back in the days where it was all about mental toughness and fitness and ugliness. It wasn't about being heavy and things like that. So although the football program was really in transition, and that's when people started using weights quite a bit, and weight programs were beginning to be introduced. The NCAA would not allow freshmen to play on the varsity, so there was a freshman team, and then there was a scout team, like they call it the B squad, and then they had the A squad, which would play, your Division I teams and stuff like that. Schedules were really made about 10 years in advance. And gosh, I remember, my freshman and sophomore year, I think we were 6-4 both years with victories over Navy both times. Then my junior year, it was when everything kind of crashed at that particular point, and it was a bad year. And then my senior year, we brought in a new coach, Homer Smith. He actually was one of the founding coaches of the triple option, archaic triple option, not a lot of the veer type of stuff that you see nowadays. And so I was a senior playing when Homer Smith came on board, and I think our record back then was like 3-8 or something like that. Again, we did not win the Navy. So one of my biggest disappointments is losing the Navy my senior year, my very last football game. I was fortunate to stay on with two great guys, Willie Thigpen and Bobby Johnson, as a grad assistant. And as a side note, that's where I met my wife. She was the secretary of the football office, and it was
the rest is history, right? So
that's the story in itself. So then I went out and did my stuff. I was an infantryman, so I went out and did my infantry stuff, and went back to the career course, and I had commanded before the career course, so the Army wanted to send me into recruiting command, and I said, "No, I don't want to go into recruiting command." So I sent a note to Homer Smith, and Homer Smith said, "Come back here. We need a offensive coordinator for the scout team, for the B team." And I said, "Sign me up, coach," because I was thinking about getting out and going into coaching at that time. And that was, right around 80 to 82 time frame. Then there was a commandant by the name of Joe Franklin, great guy, former Army football player. He saw me as a coach, and he says, "You need to be a TAC officer." And I was going to night school to get my master's degree, which I did. I got it. And so he hired me out of the coaching realm to be a TAC officer. And when I was a TAC officer, that's when I was the OR. So that's kind of the thing. And after I was a TAC officer, 2 years as a TAC officer as an OR, after that, I went back into the regular Army. And then the rest is history. So that's how it all worked out.
Wow. And you played offensive line for the football team, right?
Yeah, I was offensive center.
What was that like back then? I mean, it's so much different now then than it is now, right? I mean, what was it like in the triple? Was it different in the triple option offense, or?
Well, yeah. So I was always the light. I weighed. I mean, I think my junior year when I started both junior and senior. My junior, we were about 210 pounds. My senior, I got up to maybe about 215, soaking wet. And it but I was like, I still at that point I was like a 4.740, which for an offensive lineman was not all that bad. It was at least as fast as the defense. I mean, the offensive backs. And now they run 4.3s and 4.4s and stuff. But so I was still quick off the ball, and I had great technique. And then you have the mental enough toughness that you put into it, and so that compensated for the loss of weight. I was always the lightest guy on both sides of the ball, but. But I won 2 game balls, as an offensive line for the offense, and proud to be able to have those still today. And at the end of my senior year, I was awarded the most outstanding lineman, both offense, defense, in consideration for the Army football team, and that's a big, proud plate that I have as well. That's awarded every year, but I'm very proud back in 1975 to have received that.
Yeah, it's something that I really wanted to just get into, your football memories, because like you said, you had a really nice career as a football player, and then to come back and stay and be a part of the program too, that must have been a really, really special. Like you said, when you get the call from Homer Smith, you must be like, okay, let's go, and then later on, after a decorated military career, then you come back first as the commandant, right, and then as the superintendent.
I did. Well, I came back as a football coach, stayed on as a TAC officer. Well, before that, I was a grad assistant, then a football coach, then as a TAC officer. Then 20 years later, I come back as a commandant, and then I think 7 years later, I come back as a superintendent. So it was great because my wife, I met, she was a local girl. So she was from Highland Falls. So every time I came back to West Point, she was right at home and she loved it.
Nice. So when you come back as a superintendent, then I guess one of the more important tasks is, at least on the athletic side, is to hire a football coach. And I just want to ask you about that process. I remember talking to JT Thompson a little bit about that. I was talking to a football grad today, and he said that was a move that kind of brought winning football back to West Point with the hiring of Jeff Monken. And I was just what did you see in Jeff where you thought that this was a guy that can, because I know that you really stressed winning at everything, not just sports, when you were superintendent. So what did you see in Jeff that you thought that could change things on the football side at West Point?
Yeah, no, you're right. When the nation puts the Army in harm's way, they don't expect you to go out there and look good and do your best. They want you to win, and to win the right way. So it's a culture, it's an ethos that, as the leader development institution for the United States Army, that needs to be instilled into the culture of West Point. Winning matters, and winning the right way matters. So, I mean, that's best exemplified on the fields of friendly strife, and certainly with the football program. The football coach at the time was Coach Ellerson. He's just an incredible guy, great coach. I loved him, but the things just were not clicking, as because he lost to Navy for a number of years consistently and things like that. I realized there's a couple things that were tremendously important. Number one, you need leadership to inspire men like me at 210 pounds to play Division I football. And the only way you're going to get there is to get these people to play to levels they never thought was possible. And that's a degree of playing to excellence. And that is, inspiring, encouraging, coaching, developing to get kids to play to the upper level of their potential. And if they play to the upper level of their potential on a consistent basis, then that becomes the new norm. And then if they continue to push and continue to get better and continue to get stronger, then they get better and better and better. And that's the developmental process of a football player. But it's leadership to inspire someone to understand the why and the purpose, and not negotiate the price for success, and do whatever it takes to get yourself ready to play to those levels. In the meantime, leadership says that I'm going to play for my brothers. I will never let them down. I don't care what it takes. We are one team, and I'm going to lay it on the line no matter what it takes for my brothers on the team. And that becomes so tremendously important as well. But that's stuff that doesn't happen automatically. Leadership instills that in you. The next important thing is is you got to play with discipline. You know, what's unique about option football is the most mistake-prone repertoire of offense that's out there. Because you know the whole deal.
Yeah.
So the issue is, how do you play with discipline to minimize the turnovers and the fumbles and the penalties and things like that? I mean, here's the math behind discipline. You only get the ball about 12 to 13, 14 times a game. And if you're going to win in Division One, you got to put at least 30 points on the board. So if you're going to put 30 points on the board, that means that you got to score either a touchdown or field goal half the time you get the ball. If you get the ball 12 times a game and you have 4 fumbles or 4 turnovers, what happens to your law of averages of your opportunities to score? Not to mention the field position that you're giving up and all that sort of thing. Or if you have a long drive going and all of a sudden you have a holding penalty, and now instead of 2nd and 4, it's first and 25 or something, and you go, well, you're not going to, you just stops your drives. So discipline becomes so tremendously important. And I remember asking Coach Jim Young, how'd you coach discipline? Because he had one of the least mistakes, and he was in the top 5 in the nation, even though he had the most mistake-prone offense. He said, I absolutely never tolerated a mistake in practice or during the game. If we laid the ball on the ground during practice, that kid was pulled out. He went and run the steps all the way up to the very top. His second team went in there. His third team went in there. And he loses the opportunities to get better. And he loses repetitions. And then we would just teach holding on to the ball. And, quite frankly, Monken did all that. So as we did the interviews, the athletic director, Boo Corrigan, and myself, Boo put together a great slate. And when we sat down with Coach Monken, it was pretty clear that he was a coach that can motivate, that can inspire. I remember when I talked to him about discipline, he had all the right answers, doing all the right things. And I just knew right there, that's the guy that we needed. I couldn't make the decision by myself because there was my boss, who was the chief of staff of the Army, also former player, was very interested in who we were going to select. And we had some good conversations about that. And matter of fact, we had applied Jeff Monken up over Christmas holiday to the Pentagon to have a one-on-one interview with John Odierno. But sure enough, he didn't let us down. He's just one of those great guys that understood what it was going to take to win, to inspire kids, play on the team, to lay it on the line for each other, play with discipline. First thing he did, he said, here's my SOP for the locker room. Walks in there the next day, whoever was not to standard, their locker room went in the visiting room for a couple months, Yeah. I got the message real quick. And so discipline matters and winning matters. And so you get a Jim Young or a Jeff Monken, and they're the type of leaders, coaches that can not only inspire kids, they can really make a difference for the program.
No doubt. And you see, it didn't happen overnight, right? The first couple of years of Jeff, but then once they found the right mix and the right, everything just seemed to click. And to be on the field, as a former player, to be on the field and see those wins against Navy, right? And see those Commander-in-Chief's trophies being hoisted. I mean, what's that feeling like, that, you had a role in that, but also just a joy probably too of seeing the program back winning and back on the right track.
Yeah, no, when we finally beat Navy after 15 years, 14 losses, in the 15th year we beat them, it's just a thrill to finally beat Navy and to turn it around. But I was so happy for the players, and I was so happy for the coaches, and I was so happy for our fans and our alumni who year after year after year after year, we're starving for a victory over Navy. I know what it feels like. I remember in Iraq, staying up at 2:00 watching the Army-Navy football game, and then watching us lose, and then that long walk back to my hutch. And I said to myself, I have anything ever to do with this, we're going to fix this. And God, with God's provision, we were able to make it happen. The Commander-in-Chief trophy is the same way. 22 years without the Commander-in-Chief trophy. 22 years. and then to be able to go to the White House and celebrate, with the senior leadership of our nation, that was just a very special time. But to be able to hoist that Commander in Chief trophy in that locker room was just a very special thing. Those kids, I was just happy for them. I was happy for our coaches, and I was happy for our fans, and I was happy for our alumni because they deserve what Coach Monken was able to produce.
Yeah, because I remember writing about it, and I remember Coach Monken always saying that those past seasons to Navy, that was not on the current team that was playing. These the cadets and players had their own history to write, and boy did they write it. How about the rush on the field after the streak is broken? I mean, are you taking? I was taking cover, Bob. I was taking cover. I was on the field. I was taking cover. I mean, I was just holding my ground because you see fans coming out of the stands and stuff, cadets coming out of the stands. That was crazy. That was a great one of my best feelings in journalism.
Yeah, no, everybody's hugging me, and it was phenomenal. Yeah, it was great. And I'm just trying to work my way over to where the players were and the coaches, and it was a great time of celebration. I would say this, Sal. There was if I had to put my finger on what made the difference in producing a winning team, I mean, it was the belief in themselves that they can do it, and you can see them getting better and better and better. And I think it was Eastern Michigan. We were playing away, and we were leading, like 10-3 or something like that. And all of a sudden, it was 14-10. I don't know the exact score. You can look it up.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, when their back was to the wall, they got the ball, and rather than inwardly folding with self-doubt as they had done over and over year after year, something inspired this team to get the ball and drive the length of the field and score the touchdown that put them ahead by a couple points, and then they ran the clock out and then won the game. Yeah. That right there was a transformation that they can believe that they can do it, and that no matter what it takes, we have the ability. We'll never let our brothers down, and we're going to do whatever it takes to pull a victory out. And to me, that was the most transforming moment in turning the Army football program around. If I had to put my finger on one thing, it was at that game, and it was just Michigan, just terrible, windy, cold, and brutal. Nobody in the stands.
Yeah.
But they went and they won the game.
And
from there, the rest is history.
Yeah, it didn't matter. Like, you look at this year, what the team had to go through, and what all college football teams had to go through with the pandemic and with nobody in the stands. And you look at the season that they were able to produce, this year. It's another another feather in the players' caps, these players' caps, and the coaching staff's caps this season, right? Because out South Carolina, you guys had to go through it too. So it was obviously not your ordinary football season.
Yeah, you saw a couple of those moments this season against Air Force and against Navy, both the goal line stand and all that.
Unbelievable. You know what? I was thinking about. There's nothing better in college. There's nothing better in the Army football locker room in college football after a big win like that, right? With just like Coach Monken, I want to fight. Those kind of like sometimes speeches. Sometimes I remember during their breakthrough season, he come in every time they win a game. He put the fingers up of how many wins they had on the season, and the players went nuts. I mean, he just seems like he's beloved by the players, right? And that's a sign that you have the coach in place that you envisioned, right?
Yeah, I think it's a principle of leadership, and that is leading from the front and sharing hardships and being in the crucible along with your soldiers, along with those whom you lead. You're not leading from the back. You're not leading behind a computer. You're out there with them, sharing the hardships every single time. And when he's in the locker room relating one-to-one with the team like he is, they're not related. They don't see him necessarily as a coach. They see him as a brother in arms. And he's the guy as a brother in arms that they never want to let down. And there's someone to celebrate. And then when he comes in there, they are certainly celebrating and having a great time. And it's all well deserved.
No doubt. I wanted to talk to you about a social media part of this. You look at one of the gifs that is out there is um, a video of you riding the motorcycle, leading on the cadets and leading on the football team for season opener. I thought it was Fordham maybe one year. I was there. What was that like? What was the where did you get that idea? Because I remember being at a practice and you taking a practice run on the bike. Where did you get that idea from, and how do you think? Because what I'm trying to get at a little bit also is how the relationship between the Corps and the cadet athletes at West Point. I thought that was something that was important to you, and I thought bringing those two together, it certainly happened during your time at West Point.
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, every single athlete is a cadet, and a cadet first, and every cadet all cadets are athletes. Regardless if you're playing NCAA or intramurals or whatever. So, because athleticism is so important to physical leadership, particularly in the crucible of ground combat. So that's where the bond is in that athleticism. So everybody's an athlete. So everybody in the stands, even though they're not on the field, relates from an athletic standpoint to the athletes that are out there on the field. And the athletes know that they're cadets first, that they are not like Texas A&M, a football team separate from the Corps cadets, where they live together, eat together, and study together and do everything together. I mean, you applaud that sort of model, but that doesn't work at West Point. Those cadets, since those athletes are cadets first, they live with the Corps cadets. Their roommates are not football players. Their roommates are their teammates from their cadet company. And so that design fully integrates the football team into the Corps cadets, and it allows the Corps cadets to relate to the football team. Because other than those couple hours they're at practice on the football field, they're with their brothers and sisters within the cadet companies and the classroom and everything else. Nothing's different. So that's a very special thing, and I think that's tremendously important. Some people would say that that's kind of an impediment because it's a distraction. And I always argued it's an enabler. It really enables the guys, because not only are they playing for their brothers on the football field, they're not playing for their brothers and sisters in the Corps cadets. And they never want to let the Corps cadets down as well. That's why they relate so well. So it becomes so tremendously important that they understand that model and that design, and that they are cadets first. Now, having said that, there's huge demands for cadets' time, and athletes are the ones that are really caught in the crux of the dean pulling at them, the TAC officer pulling at them, and the athletic coach pulling at them, and they're pulled in so many different things. What I did as a superintendent is I had a weekly meeting where it was a meeting with me, the dean, the commandant, and the athletic director, and that was our executive cabinet. And we would just discuss all these issues for the university, and issues on how to better integrate athletics and academics and military and character development within the Corps cadets. And that, once you have the leadership working together, then that whole spreads down throughout the entire organization, and that's important. There will always be, by design, that tug and that nature of pulling at each other. But when you're able to have leadership that works together, and then the entire organization works together, and the cadets themselves will work together as well.
No doubt. The whole motorcycle, where did that idea come about? Oh. I gotta ask you about it. So,
well, first of all, we have that one motorcycle with high handlebars.
Yeah.
So we have that one. It's there right in the weight room. So every time I walk in there, I would look at it and say, I used to ride a motorcycle years ago. I laid it on the ground a couple times, and I said, okay, I'm not going to ride anymore. So I had some familiarity with it. Anyway, so I thought it just would be neat. Someone had suggested, well, why don't you ride that, and lead the team out? And I go, a lot of pressure. You don't turn that thing over and fall on the 50-yard line. That wouldn't go over very well. My position was, as the soup, man, I'm going to do whatever it takes to to fire and motivate not only the players but the Corps cadets, and use me as the punching dummy. I'll be glad to do it, man. If it gets them pumped up, if it fires them up, then I'll be glad to go into any role you want. When we broke out the football uniforms for the Army Navy game, and we was the 10th Mountain uniform, so it was white. Yep. That was the one we played in the snow as well, if you remember.
Yep.
So they asked me to break that uniform out at the hockey rink on a snowmobile. So I said, sure. I'll put the uniform on, the helmet. No one could tell who I was. I ride out there in front of the team on the snowmobile and do a donut right there in the middle, and then jump off, pull my helmet off. So, but if they want me to do that, I'll be glad to do it. But to me, that's what leadership's all about. So glad to do it.
I can't imagine the applause from the cadets when you did the snowmobile. That must have been that no doubt. Tate Rink was rocking that night, So, I was checking out your Twitter account, and I saw that something President PT, and so can you talk about that? Is that something that you created since you've been at South Carolina? I guess it stands for physical training, or what does PT stand for?
Yeah, physical training. So, well, I did that when I was a cadet. I mean, when I was a super at West Point, I would do PT every Thursday. I was out there every morning anyway, but I did it every Thursday and advertised with the cadets. And if they did a PT session with me, then they did it 10 times. I give them one of my soup coins, and they're all pumped to do that. And there's a good number that would come on a regular basis. So it gave me the opportunity. It gave me the opportunity to connect with students here, not cadets obviously, but just with students here. So I was glad to do that, and so I just carried over. I said, okay, well, I'm going to start doing some PT here on Thursdays, and if you're interested in joining me, if you do it 10 times, I'll be glad to give you one of my president coins. And it's amazing how many students really are attracted to it. And then I'm there every day. So I got students now that will come on Thursday when I advertise it. But they, like this morning, I had 6 students with me this morning doing it. And and a number of them have finished their 10. They're like on 30 or 40, they're doing it on a regular basis. But it's good for me because, it first, it sends the important message that I want to be approachable and that I want to engage with students, and that is important. And second, just the opportunity to engage with them gives me an opportunity to hear what's on their mind and listen to them and see some of the issues they're concerned with and things like that.
Yeah, we had a former Army football player chime in with a question about how you got the nickname Soup Daddy. Would you like to get into that?
Well, I don't know. All of a sudden, the cadets started calling me Soup Daddy. So I didn't know whether it was insulting at first or not, but now it's a very endearing sort of thing, And well, one of the things that the Corps has done over many years is whenever the soup addresses the Corps cadets, you stand up by the podium, the whole Corps goes soup.
Yeah.
If you're not there, you may think it's like boo, like they're booing you, but. Anyway, it's every time I have a guest speaker, at one of the like plebe parent weekend or something like that, or 100th night, I tell them ahead of time. I say, when I go up there to introduce you, you're going to hear a bunch of you think you're hearing boos, but it's really soup. So, but Soup Daddy is just something. I'm honored to be able to be the Soup Daddy and endeared that they would consider me as such. So.
Yeah, at first, right? You think, but then it almost became, like you said, a little bit of a term of endearment there, and it definitely, I think it really showed the, like you said, bringing the Corps and West Point together. I mean, it shows that that the cadets that's what the nickname that maybe they gave you. I don't know if it started on social media but it was neat to follow. Just wanted to ask you, the process that you had when you were hiring Jeff. I know that recently the same process you went through at South Carolina. Did what you the hiring process of the Army, did that kind of help you through the process at South Carolina? Just having that experience doing that, or?
Yeah, it did a lot. So I've really had a good time working through trying to find a coach here, and I think we got a great one. But, I worked with the athletic director, walked him through what we had done to get ready for Jeff Monken. He did a wonderful job putting the slate together. and we started uh, doing the interviews. It was in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
The season was over right after Thanksgiving for us, um, and then I ended up catching COVID in the in the middle of the interview process.
Oh, well.
So so there was a week and a half of interviews that I had to do from my house, on Zoom. And the athletic director was actually flying out there to each one of them doing a face to face. But we got through it, and we made a great selection. But same sort of criteria was necessary. When you play in the Southeast Conference and Power Five conferences like we are, I mean, these are some incredible athletes, and they've got a lot of options that are available to them. But really, to be able to build that team and lay it on the line for each other, really is something that takes a very special talent that I think the coach that we have here with Shane Beamer he's already demonstrated the ability to do that. So we're excited about him, and we're excited about the team, and we know we're going to have to do some building here in South Carolina, but I guarantee you he's going to put a phenomenal program that's going to really catapult this university and this football team to some of the better levels and the best levels of the Southeast Conference and elsewhere.
Yeah, when the opening happened, I was thinking maybe there's a reunion between Bob Caslen and Jeff Monken, right? But then when the postseason happens and with the bowl situations coming up, there was sometimes in some of the you know predictions there was maybe Army and South Carolina possibly playing in a bowl game. Maybe down the road we'll see. Would you like to see that maybe a South Carolina Army matchup down the road? If it's a bowl game, if it's a regular season game, would you like to see something like that?
Yeah, I would. My previous coach, when I talked to him about it, said absolutely not. He saw what happened with Michigan and Ohio State and Oklahoma. He goes, "There's no way am I going to let you bring the Army down here." Interestingly enough, Shane Beamer was played against Army during the Oklahoma Army game a year ago.
Yeah, yeah.
I talked to him about bringing Army down here, and he goes, "I'm not sure that's a good idea."
Yeah, so I mean, was there any chance of a bowl game between Army and South Carolina this past season, or was that just a prediction model?
I don't know. There was. I know Army didn't have a. I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the bowl games are aligned with the conferences, so and then because of the COVID and the win-loss record, you threw the win-loss record out. It was just a matter of having a football team that was healthy enough to go into a bowl game at that time. That was really the bigger criteria than the win-loss. So, matter of fact, South Carolina ended up being assigned a bowl game, even though we had the losing record, because it was the Southeast Conference bowl game, and it had to go in that direction. And so we already had an opponent. Now Southeast Conference. I mean, the South Carolina team ended up not going because they themselves, in preparation, got COVID big time, particularly with the coaches. So we didn't have any coaches left. So the game just had to be canceled altogether. Army's bowl game initially at the Independence Bowl, I think it was canceled, and then they were fortunate enough to go play West Virginia and Patriot Bowl and one of the other bowls.
Yeah, Liberty Bowl. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I think everybody in the nation was watching Army and wanted Army to get another bowl game. I was talking to my commissioner in the Southeast Conference, and matter of fact, Army took his position because it was a Southeast Conference position in the Liberty Bowl, and since he could not fill it, he opened it up and they gave it to Army instead. So that's some of the stuff behind all that.
Yeah.
And I talked to him about, is there anything we can do to help Army get a bowl game, because they really need to. So
wow.
It all happened as you saw how it played out. So it was just it's one of those seasons, that was kind of bizarre. But I'm glad for Army that they finally got a bowl game against a really Power 5 conference like they did, and had an incredible game, respectable game.
No doubt. The connection continues, right? A little connection between you and West Point a little bit, right? Help putting a good word in for them to get that bowl game. So
if Army does play South Carolina, that'd be tough. I mean,
I'm
I
not
will,
gonna ask. I'm not
I
gonna
will have
ask.
plenty of army swag underneath. I might be out there with my my South Carolina coat or whatever, but there'll be plenty of army swag underneath. And my wife Shelly too. She's going to be fully decked out in her army stuff.
I like to see. Well, I remember talking to Jeff Monken, and he said that he would never want to play Georgia Southern, right? Because that's where he came from. He had a lot of relationships that he built there. But then this season, with the 2020 season with the COVID, they scheduled Georgia Southern, and now they have a couple games way down the road against Georgia Southern too. So I mean, Bob, you never know. You just never know, right?
I know. No, that's good. It was great to see that.
Yeah, and maybe we will get that reunion on the football field too. But Bob, really appreciate you taking out the time. I know you have a busy schedule. We really appreciate the talk. It was great catching up with you, and real thanks a lot for joining us today.
Well, Sal, thanks so much for Black Knight Nation. You guys are great, and I love High Echelon. Joe Ross and his team, they do a great job with that organization, and they really are trusted, and they really do produce an excellent product. So I want to pass that on as well. But thanks so much for having me, Sal, and anytime. I mean, I'd be glad to come back anytime, day or night. So thanks for what you're doing and for keeping Black Knight Nation alive. Thanks.
Absolutely.